the second path, we're in grief and we know that what we've had isn't working anymore and it begins to fall away. But when the third path arrives and we fall into the small reality of thinking that we have found it, this is the real danger, because the third path energy is for us to go back and really think through and shed what we had before so that we can now live in the new.
As I watch so many of my friends and peers deconstruct a faith system, there is this place I watch so many folks get to where they find the thing that's the key. And it could be anything from contemplative Christianity to Buddhism, to polyamory, psychedelics, the Enneagram, you name it. But suddenly it's the thing, and it's no, this is the thing.
We want to recreate what we had. And that's not the answer of the journey. The answer of the journey is eventually to realize we're standing in the ash, and it's a time for deep grief. And something in that deep grief will flower.
Hey friends, thanks for listening to The Healer with 1,000 Faces. This is Dr. Mike Petro. We've just come through the holidays. I've had a birthday, my producer Ryan has had a birthday, and for those of you watching on YouTube, and a reminder, we have video of all these conversations on YouTube. As you can see in the background from the pile of boxes, I've started my 49th year with a move. So we've slowed our release rhythm down just a little bit, but we'll pick up again as we get further into the year. Wow, what a journey this half a century has been. You know, I've shared with you that years ago I had a very, very intense deconstruction of the religious tradition that had shaped my life. In the process, I lost my community, I lost my internal and my external GPS for a living, and I went seeking. I studied Taoism, Buddhism, Hinduism, mythology, Jungian and depth psychology, and I found so much wisdom and insight for living and healing, but I did not know how to take all this wisdom and connect it with the Christian stories and symbols that I'd grown up with that were still banging around in my head and in my heart. And to be honest, some of those stories and symbols had done me some damage. And some folks had done harm in the name of those stories and symbols. And so I longed for a way to understand them differently. And then I had the good fortune to meet Alexander Shaia. Alexander's a spiritual director, a liturgist, an author, an educator, a psychologist, a retreat leader, and a leader of pilgrimages. He was also the outside reader on my doctoral dissertation, a true privilege and a gift that I'm so grateful for. Gosh, I mentioned pilgrimages. Boy, does Alexander take us on a pilgrimage in this conversation. Alexander helps us think about a roadmap for living our lives, and he finds it in a symbolic reading of Christianity's four Gospels. And I have to tell you, whether you love the Christian story or you hate it, or you're even just a little bit allergic to it, Alexander pulls out so much wisdom and guidance for walking the healing journey. In this episode, we go over this roadmap and how Alexander first conceived of it when he was studying with Joseph Campbell. He then walks us through these four healing paths in the four seasons of our lives, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but I will tell you the idea is that in the first season, we encounter the calling to deeper living in our mountaintop moments, which can be both beautiful and terrifying. In the second season, we sail the deeper seas that break up our old ways of being. These night sea journeys, these deconstructions, these passages can be a terrifying time, but they create possibilities for newness. In the third season, we land on new shores and we step into the lush garden paradise of possibilities. We find these new ways of being and we embody them. And it's intoxicating and enlivening as we find new answers and new wisdom in new communities. And so much good can come from these moments. And yet, there's also a danger in thinking we have it all figured out. And you know you're in this moment when your friends and family are sick and tired of you telling them about the new thing that you found that's going to fix all their problems too, and all the books and the podcasts and the things you sort of keep pushing on them. Friends, we have to find balance. And so finally, if we take the journey and we integrate all of it, we find ourselves in the fourth season, walking on the road of life with some answers, a lot of questions, and an understanding that it's all about exploration, not explanation. And the quest is in the questions. There's no perfect map, but you may find some good guideposts for the journey in this conversation. I can't wait for you to listen to all the wisdom that Alexander gives us. I'm so grateful that I get to share them with you because, goodness gracious, friends, this one is a treasure chest of insight. Thanks again for joining us on The Healer with 1,000 Faces. Let's go spend some time with Alexander Shaia. Alexander, it's so good to see you. Thank you so much for making some time to hang out. I really appreciate it. I've been working on this project. It's called The Healer with 1,000 Faces, which should sound a little bit familiar for a fellow Joseph Campbell fan. And I know you're much more than just a fan when it comes to Campbell's work. And I've been exploring this idea that, you know, it's our wounds that set us out on our wandering, sort of give us our wondering, lead us to our wisdom and our work in the world. And in researching it, I thought, God, it would be so great to go back and interview some of the teachers and friends that have really, really influenced my life and my thinking, leading towards a writing project. And as I was kicking that around, a friend of mine said, well, why don't you just record the interviews and build one season of a podcast? It sounds like a really fun list of conversations. So here we are. And I couldn't help but immediately think of you. I'm so grateful that you made the time, because you had such a pivotal influence on me as I was sort of kind of re-experimenting with re-engaging a dialogue with my inherited Christian faith tradition, you know, bringing it in a dialogue with Jung and Campbell and other religions. And you taught me so much about the value of story, the value of ritual, and the value of what, how those things occupied Christian spaces. So I first of all, deep bow, thank you. And then, of course, you were kind enough to grace me as the reader on my doctoral dissertation, which was probably so much more than you signed up for. I'm so sorry. It was so long. So terribly long.
It was wonderful, and those were the days I was living in Australia. So it was truly a middle of the night experience.
Oh my God! Well, I'm glad to catch you literally burning the midnight oil for that one. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to talk to you, and let's just start with a general. I'm so curious. It's been a minute since we got a chance to catch up. What's fueling your imagination these days?
Quadratus, and more quadratus.
I love it. That makes me so happy.
So we've just created the Quadratus Foundation. We're well on our way now to the Quadratus Institute, and the work is just after a few years of languishing and wondering what was going to happen. Now it's in that springtime expansion. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love when your name comes up, and I have friends who have. I think the hidden power of the Gospels. Some friends have heart and mind, is it? Mm-hmm. And Quadratos. What a rich work this is. For anyone listening who doesn't know, I'm so excited that they get to hear this from your mouth. What is the Quadratos?
So, going back to my time with Joseph Campbell in the early 1970s.
Yeah.
And it was just the great honor of my life to actually be a student and listen to him in person. And he kept saying in those days, and I realized that later in his life he didn't say this as much, but when he was teaching at Notre Dame in the 1970s, he kept saying, every great story of transformation is told in 4 parts, which he later calls the hero and heroine's journey. But at that moment, I was also in scripture classes, and we were learning about the formation of the gospel text in the 3rd and 4th century. And why did Christianity choose 4 texts? Why not 5? Why not 1? Why not all 48? Why 4? And so I just started chewing on that. And as my parents said, when I started chewing on something, I wouldn't give up. Well, in the year 2000, finally at the end of that long time of chewing, this final piece came in from the Reverend Robin Griffith-Jones, theologian, Anglican priest in London, where he talked about the story of the community at the time the gospel came to them. And all of my psychological and spiritual classic and work on the rites of initiation, both Christian and worldwide rites of initiation, he gave me the key to understand how each of the 4 texts is one of the 4 parts of an initiation rite. So that suddenly, in a moment for me, the words of the Gospels totally melted down. And in an instant, they sprung back up in an entirely new context.
So cool.
And I saw them no longer as what Jesus said, but rather here is the story of the Christus, which is matching the energy pattern of the cosmos, which shapes the way the story is told in each gospel. So it's truly one of the world's great sacred texts, and it's a complement to the 4 noble truths of Buddhism. The first noble truth of Buddhism is the Gospel of Matthew. The second noble truth of Buddhism is the Gospel of Mark. And it's the great story of the coming out of Egypt in Judaism, and it matches the Hindu myths, and it amplifies the Dine Bahani of the Navajo, and it's a complete telling of the Inanna myth from Samaria. And it is a great universal text, except that it's the only text I know about a human person, not only an archetypal being.
In a minute, for those listening for the first time, I'm gonna ask you to take us through the 4 and the initiation. But if we can just geek out for a minute, because you're playing a song I want to dance to here. So one of my teachers here at the center, who just passed away in the fall, was a teacher by the name of Dr. Barbara Holmes. And what a gift she was to the world. What a gift she is to the world. She's still around. She's showing up in my dreams. She won't leave me alone, which feels fitting and I appreciate. And, Alexander, one of the things that had captured her imagination in the last few years of her life was this idea of Jesus as shaman. And it was this idea that not Jesus as just shaman, but that in Palestine, in the time that Jesus walked the earth, she said that Jesus would have inhabited the cultural role of a shaman. She said, look at what Jesus did. Jesus performed miracles. Jesus talked to dead people. Jesus seemed to have, commune with animals and nature. She said, this is shaman stuff. This is what shamans did. And I recently, only the last year or two, learned that I'm actually a third Russian, which I didn't know. My family's probably from Siberia, which I didn't know. And so I've been recaptured by Eliada's work on shamanism. And so I've been thinking about the hero pattern and the shaman pattern together. And, the pattern that most shamans went through is they suffered an early injury, loss, dismemberment, initiation. and then experience the healing, and then put that healing in the service of healing the world. Which sounds a little bit, I think, like the hero journey, eh?
It is, except, the 3-part journey always forgets or omits in some way that you have to say yes to the journey, which is the first part.
Absolutely. Yes. And a lot of folks, I think, don't want to say yes to the journey. Yeah. It's scary, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
Utterly.
Take us in. Let's start there.
And Campbell says, the more true the journey, the scarier it is.
Yeah.
Campbell always emphasized that for you to say a yes to a profound journey should be difficult, or will be difficult.
I was talking to the teacher who taught me Joseph Campbell a couple weeks ago, and it was great. I had Joseph Campbell at Pacifica, and then you and I met, and you opened my eyes to this pattern in the Gospels, and it just put these two things together so quickly in a way that just revolutionized my world. But he was saying that it is his great heartbreak that the quote, "If you follow your bliss, doors will open where previously there were no doors in your life." This is a quote from Joseph Campbell. And he said it's his great heartbreak that that's the quote that Campbell is known for, because it sounds so romantic, and it is. But he's like, it's not, someone else said recently, God, if I'd followed my bliss in my 20s, it would have killed me. And he said, the same Joseph Campbell who said we have to let go of the life that we thought we were going to have the life that's waiting for us. That's not easy. So let's start there. And one of the things I've been exploring is how, like, even our wounds are a wake-up call that set us out on our wandering. But that's not for the faint of heart. So what can you tell us about the very beginning of the journey and the question of saying yes to it?
It usually happens in one of two ways. Our world totally falls apart, which is probably the most usual way, where we wake up one day, we're sort of in our habitual world, and collectively there's a 9/11. Collectively, there's an earthquake, there's a volcano, where everything seems in our life to get swept away. And usually our response to that is to desperately reach back for what was.
Wow.
We want to recreate what we had. And that's not the answer of the journey. The answer of the journey is eventually to realize we're standing in the ash, and it's a time for deep grief. And something in that deep grief will flower. But usually it doesn't happen quickly. Many, 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 many years ago, I used to be a liturgical consultant for churches who, because I was in California, and it was either to be churches that had been destroyed by fire or in an earthquake. And by the time I arrived on the scene, they had already got the building commission, and they had the finance committee, and they had pulled out the old blueprints, and they were ready to go. And my job was to invite them to move into a social hall for a year or two. Live in this ash place without the beauty, without the old plan. Find out who you are now. And then from that place, begin to dream a new dream. But that's hard.
Yeah, it is.
It's hard to do it personally.
Yeah.
I had a couple of periods in my life and sort of just come through one where a whole series of ashes fell on my life and my work when I wasn't looking.
Yeah.
And God, I wanted to go back to yesterday. I wanted to go back just a month ago.
Yeah.
And I fortunately have enough grace to know that's not the answer.
I so appreciate that. I was just talking to some friends the other day about, just like full transparency. I think 2019, I had the very beginning of 2019, I came to the end of a very, very painful season in life, and it had cost me a relationship, a family. In the space of about 3 years, I lost my relationship with my dad, my job, the marriage that I was in, the family that had constellated around that. And it all just sort of imploded. And I remember I was living on the East Coast, and I had a bunch of friends who were like, all right, it's time. You got to get the hell out of there. Like, it's time to go. That season of life is permanently over, and it has nothing for you. And I didn't have anything to go on but intuition, Alexander. But I remember saying to my friends, I was like, I don't want to move a muscle, because if I feel like if I just react and go, who knows where I'll end up. I want to wait and sit still. I don't want to run away from. I want to move towards and see like what good door opens. And then it took about a year, and then I ended up here in New Mexico. But I think for anyone listening, there's so much wisdom in that. Stay in the ashes. How in your own life, and when you see folks that you're giving counsel to or writing for, how do you find the courage to stay there in that liminal space?
I'm trying to think back to a much earlier time in my life. Now in my life, I've gone through the cycle enough that I've got a couple of kernels of wisdom, and I know that I just have to go through it.
Yeah.
And I also know that it will turn around.
Yeah.
But when I was younger, and the first time I went through it, when I knew I had to leave seminary, and I knew that that was going to be effectively the end of my relationship with my father, and it was. And it was only that if I knew that if I stayed in seminary, I would kill myself.
Yeah.
And it was that the fear of suicide that gave me the strength to say, I can't do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then to go and face my father, and both that moment and shortly after that coming out as gay was the effective end of that relationship.
The story I just told, I had my partner at the time and I were working with a therapist, and it just was a disaster. It was going nowhere. We switched to a new therapist who, like 3 weeks in, was like, oh, the solution to this is easy. You need to not be in this relationship. Like, problem solved. But she had met with us twice and then asked to meet with me once alone. So it was just she and I, and she looked me in the eye and said, if you don't make a change in your life, you will not be alive in a year. And she said, I'm not being metaphorical. I'm being literal. And she saw it. I hadn't told anyone, but she saw it. I think, what is it, AA, that says, we don't change until it hurts too much to stay the same. But those moments that back us into a corner, so heart-shattering.
I mean, it has to be grace that I didn't commit suicide, that I did leave, that I did tell my father.
Yeah.
But when I look back now, I don't know how I still don't really know how I did it, except grace.
Yeah. There's a wound that sets you out on your wandering, huh? Alexander, when I think of, please.
Well, we're talking the mid-1970s. And that wandering lasted until the early 2000s. There'd be a glimmer here, there'd be a glimmer there. And I think of, I can think of gospel accounts, but one of the stories that has so held me is the story of Inanna, the Queen of Heaven, who hears the call to visit her sister deep in the earth. And Inanna, with all of her beautiful raiment, has to go through 7 gates, and at each of the gates, something is taken away from her. And the text says to her at each gate, "Silence, Inanna. The appropriate rituals must be observed." Yeah. And she comes into her sister's chamber, Urshigal. And there's a very surprising moment there, not what I expected. And I won't tell that part of the story in case people want to read the myth. But it wasn't a kindly greeting.
No.
But Inanna had the wisdom before she left on this journey to ask a couple of her companions to pray for her and to tell them how they might help her if she fell into distress.
Yeah.
And I so think of that. I think of that when I was leading people on the Camino, on pilgrimage. It's like our first days before we actually started walking was about asking who it is who wants to be our companion and who we're going to ask to pray for us and to know how to bring nourishment to us when we've fallen into the netherworld.
It's amazing to think that our wounds sometimes lead us to our wise guides. But to invoke Dr. B again, one of the conversations she and I had in the last year that she was alive, we were talking about the path of descent, these moments. And she said to me, "You got to remember, it's a crowded path, this path of descent." Which feels counterintuitive because I think in my life those moments have always felt so lonely. And she pointed out that so many of us have experienced them. There might be no time we're less alone than when we're sharing that harrowing moment, passing through those gates like Inanna, as so many other folks have, right? We're together with all of humanity who's experienced that journey through the dark night of the soul or the valley of the shadow of death, and yet it's so terrifyingly lonely. Yeah.
We feel so alone.
How?
I try to remind myself that, it's a true feeling, but I try to remind myself that there's actually a larger reality out there.
Yeah, for folks listening who haven't had the opportunity yet to take that wandering and ritually live it out in a pilgrimage or something like it, how would you counsel folks to find those that they ask to journey with them or to pray for them in the passage?
Choose 1 or 2, maybe 3 at the most, but people who have made that journey. People who have been through that ash-filled valley of the shadow of death. Maybe that's somebody who has gone through a deep addiction journey. Maybe it's someone who's gone through a long, difficult time with a spouse or a child. But someone who knows how to sit with rather than in any way try to rescue you.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to ask you to say that again because holy moly, is that profound. Can you tell us more about someone who knows how to sit with rather than rescue?
Yeah. I know from those who were able to sit with me and just, they didn't have the perfect words. They didn't in any way try to give me advice. They tried to let me know that there will come a time when you will come out the other side of this. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe a year from now. This will end and you will have a larger life. And I know right now that you can't see that. And that's okay. It's what I tried to do as a hospital chaplain when you get those 2-3 o'clock in the morning calls and the patient is just racked with pain. And you go in and hold their hand, rest your hand on their hand, and try to invite them to breathe without tightening up. Just a little bit. Just relax into the pain just a little bit. And then the pain lessens.
It's interesting that yeah, you mentioned earlier the first noble truth of Buddhism, which I know can be languaged in a lot of different ways. I think the one that's become the most digestible for me is just that suffering is an inevitable part of life, right? And I think about probably the drama and the trauma that I've caused in trying to make that not real, thinking that there's ways that I can not say yes and not be in the hard moments that show up. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Actually, I think, Mike, that's the second noble truth.
Oh, is it? Tell me the first one.
Impermanence. All is change.
Ugh.
And I don't like that one.
Yeah.
I thought as I got older I would be more comfortable with change, and I find that I'm less comfortable. I have to. I don't want to keep changing.
Yeah.
And yet, when I can learn to move with the dance, there's a great joy.
I could see why I would want to make the second noble truth the first, because I also am tired of the fact that all life has changed. I'm only, I'm 48. I just hit my 5th year in New Mexico. I think this is the first time in my adult life, knock on wood, please God, I don't even want to say this out loud, but I have not hit 5 years and had a hard life reboot. Please.
I'll join you in that.
Thank you. I think you know what I mean, right? Yeah, it's hard to keep a wide open heart and say yes to the fact that life is always changing. Yeah. It's so impermanent. Yeah, well, it's as silly as it is. Here's my cat on my lap, right? And he'll here he is. And
hey.
Yeah,
Name,
I just
name
Albus from
Albus.
Harry Potter. Yeah, and he looks like it. Yeah, cool. I have 2 dear friends this week. One friend that lost a cat, and another dear friend that lost a dog. And it's just, God, it just shatters your heart. Like life, it just keeps going. The wheel keeps turning. So in the Quadrados, to start there with the saying yes to that, to letting our hearts feel all of it. When I think of Jesus, I think of this towering, invincible figure who's so stoic and never rattled and, always has the answer. And I think suffers of the cross. And I know that's a caricature, but where in the Gospels do we find that first initiatory knowledge of saying yes to it?
Well, so again, in this new paradigm of the Gospels, the entire text of Matthew is about the journey to say yes. Every word, every story is about what we have to go through to come to that yes. And the signature moment in Matthew, and it's only told in Matthew, of course, because it's about this moment. Jesus, Yeshua, is about to be arrested. And he says to the disciples, look, the betrayer is at hand. And the betrayer comes and kisses Yeshua. And Yeshua says, do what you have come to do. So
Wow.
As we're standing in the first days, moments, years of the ash, if we can stop asking the question of who did what to whom, and who am I going to take to a court of law, and who's going to pay for this, and ask the spiritual question, which is, okay, Holy One, I'm here now. Let this do the deep work in me that only this work can do. So it is in Matthew, the great shaman Yeshua's ability to receive such a moment. And I love that, just looking at the languaging immediately after this, it says, and they came and they arrested Jesus. That when we say yes to this moment, we're going to stand shackled, arrested, incapable in some way of free movement. And when we get to the very last account in Matthew, it's called the Great Commission, but it isn't, because it's only the end of the first chapter.
Yeah.
And so Yeshua appears to the disciples on the unnamed mountain, and Yeshua says, I'm going to give you the only thing that you need to know as you stand shackled and in an arrest, and that is that I'm here with you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you where to go.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you what resources you have. I'm not going to tell you who your friends are. I'm going to tell you that there's an experience of the Holy One with you and in you.
Yeah.
And the rest of it's just details that we'll figure out together.
Yeah. There's a real nerdy ass mantra that I repeat to myself, which is, stuff that only makes sense in my head, that's sometimes too crowded with big words. But I often tell myself that the only answer to theodicy is theophany, The only answer to why does a good God let bad things happen is God seems to show up in the midst of it. Wow. I am thinking about the crucifixion and what you're saying there, and wondering if, sometimes saying yes is letting yourself be nailed down to something. Which is terrifying. Saying yes to any one thing is saying no to the 10,000 other things that could be, especially in this day and age where we love the illusion of infinite possibility.
Right.
But God, what a...
As gripping as and horrific as this image is in Matthew,
Yeah.
In some ways, we have to be a Herod.
Wow.
There are so many lives that we cannot live because there is a life that we must live.
Yeah. I think, at the ripe old age of 48, I think when I turned 35, I made a deal with myself that I've more or less stuck with for the last 13 years, which is that I would stop obsessing over the other lives that I could have lived. I was like, no more going back and thinking, what if I'd taken another turn at that crossroads? Or I should have, been a therapist instead of a spiritual director. I should have stayed in New York City and should have gone to California. I should have made that relationship work. And so on and so forth. But goodness gracious, the temptation of the labyrinth of what could have been. Any before we transition to Mark, any counsel for the courage it takes to be a Herod and to let go or to say no to all those could be's, to say yes to a will be?
Prayer and friends. I really hope that for most of us, we do not have to make this journey without at least one companion who can keep reminding us of the deep wisdom. I have this commitment with a dear friend of mine. We're about the same age. I hope that this day will come years from now. But our commitment is that when one of us is dying, the other one will say, Alexander, you're just dying.
Yeah.
No drama. You're just dying. That's all.
Yeah. God.
In Matthew, to know that the Holy One is with us and in us,
Yeah.
and all the rest is detail.
Yeah.
So we need all of our spiritual practices and our friends to keep remembering and experiencing that.
I so appreciate that. Yeah, please.
Matthew was composed, we believe, to the Jewish Christians after the destruction of the temple and the massacre of the Jewish priesthood, when many of their compatriots were telling them that either this was the end time or that the Holy One was angry with them and was punishing them. And the text of Matthew is, no, this is not punishment. For whatever reason, this is an invitation to a new and larger journey.
Yeah. It's, I want to go there, the invitation to the new and the larger journey, but you're leading me to think of, there's a passage from Origen that I love so much, and I'm not going to get it right word for word, but he basically says, to those of you who want to obsess about whether or not we're in the end times, probably worth more of your energy to think about your own end times, right? Because at some point you're going to face the hour of your death, and I'm realizing, one, if listening deeply to what you're saying, we're sort of always facing the hour of our death because there's always something to let go of. And then two, watching some of my most precious mentors right now facing their own mortality. Dr. B just having passed away, friends Jim Finley, Richard Rohr, coming to the end of their journey and realizing, God, this never stops, does it?
I do remember that for our earliest Christian ancestors, that they talked about that the ability to say a yes to a death within our life was big death. That last breath was little death.
Wow.
Because if you have participated in all of those big deaths throughout your life, you know what that last breath is about.
Wow, I think you just blew my mind a little bit with the inversion of little death and big death. I'm going to think on that for a long time.
We know in physics that energy is never destroyed.
Yeah.
Why do we think that we might, quote unquote, end?
Yeah. I appreciate that. So here we are in Matthew. And if we can say yes to these deaths, what is revealed to us in the Gospel of Mark?
So one of the great, incredible moments for me was when I realized that these four texts form a seamless story. That precisely where Matthew ends is where Mark opens in the interior journey. And so at the end of Matthew, if we are saying yes, as we stand covered in ash to this new journey, where is it going to lead us? It's going to take us to the wilderness, which is where Mark opens with John in the wilderness, John the mikvahist in the wilderness. Because we know that the next step on this journey is the shedding of the old shell that no longer serves, the shedding of the old thoughts, the old feelings, the old attitudes, the old way of life that was too small. But I wish that I don't know how a snake slips out of its skin, but I have this image that somehow it's easy. Maybe it isn't. But we have got, we cannot come into the larger life without slipping out of the old skin.
Yeah.
Which in our lives has some struggle.
Yeah.
And so Mark is that text written to the Jewish Christians of Rome. In the days right after the fire of 64, where they were accused and then condemned of having set the great city on fire. And as we have been reminded over and over, if you have watched any of the broadcasts from Vatican City in the last couple of weeks, that ground that the basilica sits on, that piazza in front of the basilica, is the killing ground. It's the Circus Nero, where all these early Christian martyrs died. Looking at that obelisk as likely the last thing that they saw.
Yeah.
And that what those Christian martyrs were doing was probably the same thing that Yeshua was doing on the cross, which is chanting Psalm 22, which starts with, my God, why have you forsaken me?" and ends with a paean of praise to the God who always has been and always will be the radiance leading our children and our grandchildren forward. So that the text of Mark is about walking through the valley of the shadow of death by the aroma of resurrection.
Yeah.
It's not just walking through the valley of the shadow of death. That Yeshua in Mark is showing us that living presence as we walk covered in grief and ash. That we know Psalm 22, we know how it opens, we know the feeling of how it opens. But we know that Psalm 22, which was the psalm every devout Jew wanted to have on their lips as they died at the time of Jesus, that it's a journey psalm that moves to that glorious paean of praise at the end.
Yeah.
So that this text of Mark is inspiring us to walk through this valley with the strength of the noble lion.
I love that, because if memory serves, the lion is often associated with the book of Mark. Is that correct?
It is.
That's...
And
wow.
it's the Lion of Judah, the lion that lives suffering, knowing that there's something greater.
Yeah.
We don't need any more suffering than we already have in our life. Nobody needs to go looking for it.
God, if that is not the truth.
But to wear the suffering that we do have in our life, and knowing, I love what Henry Nouwen talks about, that suffering is the way that we join in humanity.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, right? And become wounded healers. I appreciate that. I have a... Oh, go ahead.
No.
I have a lion tattooed on my arm over here from the Book of Kells. And it was when I lost my brother to suicide in 2008. You know, I've always associated this very deeply with him. And it was because when I saw the Book of Kells and they explained the 4 animals on the plate cover, they said, well, Mark is associated with a winged lion because it's Christ victorious over death. And I think you've just deepened that for me. I really, really appreciate that.
Well, I ache for the lesser awareness of the death scene in Mark, because yes, Jesus is saying, I understand in this moment how you feel abandoned.
Yeah.
But Jesus on the cross in Mark is the noble lion who's praying Psalm 22. And it's like, I don't think that the evangelist needed to put the entirety of the psalm in the text any more than if we had heard a Christian dying and heard the Christian say, Our Father who art in heaven.
Yeah.
Every Jew knew where that text went.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking of Jeremiah and so many psalms of lament that courageously give full vent to grief, but then somehow end in praise. So how do we, so someone's listening and this is inspiring. How do we live the wisdom of Mark in the moments that we find ourselves experiencing this? One more little bit of pastoral advice. What would you say?
Well, beyond friends and spiritual practice, it is this yoking into a profound silence. One of my images of this comes from the Odyssey. And if you remember the scene of Ulysses, who has to go through the straits, where the sirens are on one side and the sibyls are on the other. And he's been instructed to put wax in the oars people's ears.
Yes.
And that he has to lash himself to the mast.
Yeah.
He needs to hear it all and make no decision.
Wow.
Take no action. I mean, this is, in the shamanic sense, the dismemberment.
Yeah.
You know, the second movement of the shaman's initiation is to be dismembered.
Yeah.
Most people, not knowing this wisdom and not having the friends, will usually try to get out of this. Again, we want to go to the court of law. This shouldn't be happening. Somebody did wrong. Rather than the deep work of sitting and hearing it all, but making no discernment until something moves. This is a wisdom that most of our communities don't know how to practice.
Yeah.
Most of our, I think somewhat, because we've just come out of the conclave, I think, that's in just a couple of days. They went through maybe 36 hours of this, where all the electronics were taken away, and They were basically in quiet in prayer with subtle conversations,
Yeah.
waiting for something to move in their midst that was different than logically trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about the disciples waiting for Pentecost. That was a practiced waiting, right? That wasn't just standing around waiting for something to happen. It was a practice. My one of my own religious heritages is the Moravians. They did the same thing. They had a long season of being persecuted and struggling, and then as these sort of like wandering, fleeing tribes found sanctuary, and as deeply traumatized people were plagued with constant infighting, and they decided it was time to wait on a miracle. And so they went into this long season of prayer and practice. And in a miracle that they claimed was like unto what happened at Pentecost, they say the Spirit of God fell and they miraculously learned to love each other. And then that's the beginning of that very, very mystical movement of Protestant Christianity. But that's not standing around on a street corner, right? This is a different kind of waiting.
Right. Right. And this was the genesis of what we today call the season of Lent. I won't go into that story, but there are these moments in the Christian year which are about a profound inner waiting.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my, Jim Finley's a friend and a teacher. He has this, Mirabai refers to it as the statement that everyone puts in their books where he says, if we're absolutely grounded in the absolute love of God that protects us from nothing, but sustains us in all things, then we can touch the hurting places in ourselves and others with love. And I've been meditating on that statement for years. And what I'm realizing listening to you right now is how much that grounding, it's not a psychological state. It seems like it's an intentional practice. Alexander, am I remembering correctly? It's been a minute since I read the Quadrados, but it was such a good read and it stayed with me. And I seem to remember were there also 4 images that you used for each of these seasons? Am I correct in thinking there was mountain, river, deep sea crossing, road, and garden, or am I wrong? And if I'm wrong, we'll just cut it out, so no worries.
Yeah, no. Each gospel is written on a topography.
Oh, yeah.
And Matthew is the topography of going up a high, difficult mountain climb. And Mark is being in a boat in a swirling storm at sea. Small boat.
Yeah. Oh.
And John is that incredible fresh garden. Though I love to remember that gardens are made up of, in gardens things are decaying and blooming and decaying all at once. It's a garden is an image of everything.
Oh, that's
in
good.
The same moment.
That's good.
And then Luke is the road.
Oh, that's so great. So thank God I am very slightly phobic of deep water, so I'm glad I've never had the experience of being in a small boat that's swirling in a storm, but it sounds terrifying. And to just hang in or keep rowing. I am fascinated by the story of Jonah. So
I've never been in a small boat at sea.
Yeah.
I took one cruise. I'm not a person who particularly likes cruising, but I went on one cruise with 8,000 of my best friends. And we were in a storm at sea. And I could not believe how that storm made this huge ship feel like a matchbox.
Wow. That sounds like the stuff of nightmares to me.
It was all night long.
Oh.
Which made it even worse because you could really see nothing as you were just thrown in your room from one wall to the next.
Oh my God.
Anyway,
That sounds so terrifying. I think about, Jonah. In the story of Jonah, he's asleep in the boat in a storm, and it has a negative connotation. In the story of Jesus sleeping in the boat, it has a positive connotation. But either way, I'm like, how in the world could you sleep in a storm? That just scares me half to death.
Back to Finley's quote.
Yeah. So if we like the noble lion, give ourselves to it. If we survive the night sea passage, row into it if we need to. What comes on the other side with the Gospel of John?
So this is one of the miracles, because to us it feels a miracle. The movement from the second path, as seen in the text of Mark, to the third path, as seen in the text of John, is not logical, is not continuous. It's discontinuous. In a moment, something arrives. And I've seen this in my life. I've seen this sitting with others. A minute ago, 5 seconds ago, I was almost in utter despair, and something arrives. Whether we say it comes up, it falls down, it bursts out. And we find ourselves in a very different place. We find ourselves in a place where the angst and the pain have not gone away in some real way, but the resources to meet it have arrived. So that I no longer feel so drained by it or caught by it. And that I might even describe this as joy. The text of John, we believe, comes from the Roman city of Ephesus, the Roman capital of Ephesus, which was fairly affluent, very diverse. One of the two centers of women's power, the other being Alexandria.
Yeah.
And this community was divided because of its wealth. I've 2 years ago, I was in Ephesus, and I was really so moved at this ground of Ephesus. If you put your finger in the ground, in about 10 seconds, it's going to sprout leaves.
Wow.
This earth there is river silt. It is so fecund. It's the center of all of the mother goddess religions going back eons. And yet, in the first century, it was a city, because of its wealth, it had divided into competing temples to gods and goddesses. And each of these temples were like social clubs or fraternities or sororities in some way. And they wanted nothing to do with the other one, because their temple, their god, their goddess was their honor. There was no desire to share that with others. And into this place of such wealth, but yet strife, comes the message of the Christus, the Messiah, who calls everybody away from their particular expression and back to some experience of the one source. And the community in Ephesus, hearing this and feeling this first blush of the one source, fall into this blissed state, something greater than they could have ever imagined, hearing this in the 40s of the first century. But the problem is, 50 years later, when the text is composed, this community that was born to serve the one source has fallen back into all the old jealousies and all the old difficulties and all the in-groups and out-groups.
Yeah.
And so the text of John is about reminding us how to stay in that place of the one source. But don't think it's going to be easy.
Yeah.
Don't think that you have it once and you have it for all time. It's an ongoing work. It's an ongoing practice.
Yeah.
And the challenge to the practice is the blissed out zeal. Because when we feel this energy of this incredible vision of oneness which is ever ahead of us, it comes with the feeling that we have it.
Yeah.
And don't understand that it's actually not the answer, it's the energy to the answer.
Yeah.
And unless we gradually integrate that energy, it will come up behind us and we'll find ourselves in a worse place.
I want to ask you a little bit more about that. And I want to pause just to offer a humorous aside, which is one, I work for a growing nonprofit that puts a lot of spiritual teaching out into the world. And I love when friends say, "Oh my God, that must be amazing. You all must be blissed out all the time." And I'm like, "Are you kidding? Let me restate what I just said. I work for a growing nonprofit that puts spiritual teaching out into the world." And then there's those who know. They go, "Oh, okay, sounds challenging," because it's intoxicating when you're close to that, and I think a lot of people wouldn't guess that the garden could be as dangerous as the night sea crossing in its own way. One is, am I on the right track? Is that accurate?
You're absolutely on the right track. I mean, and this is such a critical thing for people to begin to understand, because it's where churches get stuck, it's where denominations get stuck, it's where we get stuck. Because when we have these moments, we think that's it, and I just have to either figure out how to stay there or get back to there, and realize that both of those are leading us back on the journey and not ahead.
Just taking a lot of notes today while you're talking. This is good stuff.
Look, and this is why I love that in the text of John, this is why at the beginning of the text, Jesus becomes angry in the temple.
Yeah.
Because the transition from the agony and the angst of the second path to the beatific vision of the third is that unless we do this very carefully, what we're going to do is we're going to gild yesterday and call it new.
Wow.
When the first thing the beatific vision has to do is deconstruct us. You think the deconstruction is in the second path? No, the deconstruction is at the beginning of the third path.
All right, hang. I gotta give me a second. I gotta take that in, because that's really good. And holy moly. Okay, yeah. Tell me again. So the deconstruction, you think the deconstruction is in the second path, but actually it's in the third path. Please say more.
Well, in the second path, we're in grief, and we know that what we've had isn't working anymore, and it begins to fall away. But when the third path arrives, and we fall into the small reality of thinking that we have found it, this is the real danger, because the third path energy is for us to go back and really think through and shed what we had before, so that we can now live in the new.
So I'm going to try and throw a couple practical examples, and I might be way off. So just tell me if I am, because this is really good. I doubt
that you are, but go ahead.
No, this is really good. But I think about, so I'll use my little tribe, right? I'm as many are these days. I'm a deconstructed evangelical who then took a lot of different paths to find the spiritual path that I'm on now. And as and I'm also a spiritual director. I have some folks that I companion. And as I watch so many of my friends and peers deconstruct a faith system or any kind of central guidance system, I also have friends who've deconstructed everything from Freemasonry thought to like Ayurvedic medicine. There is this place I watch so many folks get to where they like find the thing that's the key. And it could be anything from contemplative Christianity to Buddhism to polyamory, psychedelics, the Enneagram, you name it. But suddenly it's the thing, and it's like, no, this is the thing. Is that like in the general vicinity of the garden that we're talking about?
Well, yes.
Okay.
But because we brought our old awareness and called it new, because we have new energy. And what has to happen is that we have to gradually use this new energy to truly build something new and not return to what was as a thinking style and call that new. So in the text of John, starting with the story of Jesus and Nicodemus, all the way up to the foot washing, all of that text was meditations on how to keep the new moving forward and not sliding back to the old.
Gosh. There's a random free association. Somewhere on my shelf over here, there's a book called Thinking Orthodox. And it's literally thinking Eastern Orthodox. And it was by a theologian who I have not read the entire book. But she starts it in this fascinating manner where she addresses a whole slew of Protestant converts who've recently come into the Eastern Orthodox Church. And she says, if you want to leave Protestantism and join the Orthodox Church and now turn around and argue with everyone that you have the right theology, you're still being a Protestant. She's like, this is a fundamental shift in operating system. It's a whole new way of being and thinking. It's not about arguing theology. Is that in is that in the neighborhood of what you're saying? I'm getting a lot out of this, if you can't tell. So tell me about the change in the thinking system, so we don't just create a new fundamentalism, I suppose.
Right. It's a change. It's a change of worlds. It's a change of beings. For me, both because of my age and growing up Catholic, the Second Vatican Council was the opening of a third path moment for Catholicism. And we should have expected, if we had been more wise in the journey that we supposedly are the shepherds of, that what's going to happen is that there's going to be a huge backlash. There always is. It's just part of the universal law. But we sort of let the backlash go way back. That the regressive fear pulled everything away. Maybe now we're coming back to it with the new opening. Maybe this is the way that it had to be. But what happened after the Second Vatican Council is that Nicodemus got put at the head of the table. Nicodemus is the voice who says, Yeshua, I see your goodness, but I know that there's that there's a law from God that cannot be violated, that says that you can ultimately only know the privilege of Yahweh if you've been put in the womb of a Jewish mother and been reborn with Jewish blood. That awareness of Nicodemus moves away from the true beatific vision of oneness that this text opens with.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
Yes.
I think
And
about
I like to say, in the beginning is the breath, and the
I love
breath
that.
is with the Holy One, and the Holy One is the breath.
I think I don't know if you remember this. You and I I don't remember what year it was. It might have been 2009 or 2010. I attended an Easter Triduum with you. And if I'm not conflating two different events in my mind, then I might be. I think you were also walking us through Return to the Center by Bede Griffiths. And I want to say thank you for that, because that going into that book, Return to the Center, was a bit like what you're describing for me at that moment, of that sort of getting back to what's really happening in the middle of it, and not getting tricked by the new trappings, to put new clothes on an old thing. What's the pastoral spiritual director advice for someone in this season?
So here's where your relationship with the people that you're working with, walking with, is so important. Because oftentimes at this moment, the person who is in this fresh energy, in therapy, they want to leave therapy. All the symptoms have gone away. I'm fine. Thank you very much. I have come for what I've gotten what I came for. Or in spiritual direction, it is, I know what my mission in life is, and I'm off to found, create, do whatever it is that I'm sensing. The energy at the third path oscillates very high and very low. In some ways, it's like our fingers in the socket. And the voltage is way too strong. And so what we have got to do is, over a really gradual, somewhat quiet time, step the energy down, sit in the energy, allow the oscillations to modulate until we're in a much more quiet place to figure out the deep truth of what this is leading us to. So the great fear of the third path, or the great danger of the third path, is going too high with the passionate zeal, or going too low with the sense of despair that this is so beautiful, but I can't have it, or I can't do it. Most of us today probably tend more towards the high passionate zeal. There are some who fall down almost to a suicidal psychosis. Both are simply the oscillating opposites of the energy pattern.
That's wild. Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking of Carl Jung's Red Book for some reason, but the sort of hello, cat. The yeah. Oh, gosh. Well, you know what I'm also thinking of is sort of like being struck by lightning, and how important it is to be grounded so you don't get fried, right?
Yeah.
Gosh. I will say, please.
Well, I mean, just for me as a director, or for me when with the person that I see for direction, this is where the strength of the relationship really allows them to do some hard love. Yes, I understand this incredible moment. I want you to really receive the grace of this moment, but to know that you do not know what it's about yet. Receive it, but stay with beginner's mind. Even though you think you know what this means, you don't. That's still to be discovered. It's still to be clarified.
Wow. I think,
and I love how John ends with this story that was added to it, with this conversation between Yeshua and Peter. And, Peter who was being told to go take care of the sheep and the lambs, except this is code language. Shepherds in the first century were people they were criminals. They had gone against some law of society. They were removed from village life and city life. They were made to go live out in the fields to do the work of the least so that they would smell of sheep, so that if they came into the village or the city, as soon as someone smelled the sheep on them, it's like, run, get inside, hide your children, protect yourself from this person who is such a ravenous, homeless addict who has come to rob you. And so Peter is being told, go take care of that place inside yourself and with others.
I'll ask you in a minute to bring us on home because I know we've been talking for a hot second. I appreciate so much time, but I want to say this one thing because this is really helpful for me. I told you at the top of the conversation, I've been thinking a lot more about the healer's journey lately as opposed to the hero's journey. With no disrespect to Joseph Campbell, I think a radical misunderstanding of the hero's journey happens right here, right before that moment where Jesus tells Peter to go feed my sheep. In that I go out, I suffer my trials, I have my adventures, I slay my dragons, and then I find myself, and now the journey is over. And the reason I think the healer's journey is more helpful for me is like I do my healing and then I put my healing in service, is that I found myself and I found my vocation that's where the real work begins. That's not the end of the story. That's yet another beginning. Does that feel right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what very few stories, even though they say that they're following Campbell, they don't tell the return to community to be of service.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate that because I think you planted the seed for me in that in any other system, it's always 3 acts, not 4. And so what you do with the book of Luke started to screw the light bulb all the way in for me. And even in the work when I saw you continue to work with folks on the Camino, and you're like, oh no, it's the return that's the really hard part. It's not even the pilgrimage, it's the going back. Can you quite literally bring it all home for us and tell us, why is the going back to the community and service? Why is the return journey? Why is the Gospel of Luke so crucial and so important?
Well, because up all the way through the third path, all the way on the Camino to wherever you're going, Santiago or Mixia, wherever you're going, all of that's the journey of awakening. You can't transform until you are back home and have to put the awakening into daily practice. That's transformation. And what happens sometimes on the Camino is that people have these incredible experiences, which I celebrate, but know now that the hard and truly the more lonely work, because all of your walking companions won't be back home with you, is that long, steady, gradual process of making those new choices. And Luke is that text written to all the early Christian communities at the end of the first century who have now been made illegals by the Roman Empire. And they're saying, I've got this wonderful new grace of oneness, a new form of the way that we can live together, and I so want this to go forward and to flower. And the Roman Empire is killing us. You know, My choosing to live this way means I'm not going to get the good houses. I'm not going to get the right neighborhoods. I'm not going to get the health care. I'm not going to have the schools. My children may not have a better life. And yet, the text of Luke says, this is how you really transform. By living your practices without looking for large results. And that Christianity lived the principles of the journey for 225 years before the Roman Empire was no more. It's this deep belief that comes out of the soil of the journey that the work that we're doing is the Holy One's work. I don't have to win a battle. I don't have to physically change something. I mean, sure, I want good laws and I want honest politicians, et cetera, but the deep work of transformation is the work of daily spiritual practice, and the aroma of that will go out. The Holy One will use the aroma of our spiritual practice to change the world, eventually.
And I assume that aroma smells like sheep sometimes.
And it definitely smells like sheep.
Oh man, that's so good. And I appreciate that because well, first of all, I love it. The image in Luke is the road, yeah?
Yes.
It's just walking it out.
Which
right?
has no destination.
Oh, man.
It's just the road.
Wow.
Because you're never going to get anywhere. Like the disciples, like in Luke, all the great teachings in Luke happen on the road. They don't happen in the village. They don't happen at any destination.
Yeah. Oh, God.
We're not going to get to the Perusia on this side of the veil.
Yeah.
And
I so appreciate that. Yeah, please.
Well, and just, I know how difficult these days are. And I know how much people are worrying about, is there going to be a turnaround? And one of the things, it's not easy to say this, but it is true. I don't have hope anymore. I know. And I really don't believe that Yeshua is wanting us to be a people of hope. Yeshua wants us to know that the Holy One will take care if we do what we are called to do.
I so appreciate that. We can wrap it up on this last note. I have so many friends who are so committed to their inner work, and it's amazing. It's a sight to behold. I am as well, and I'm glad to see it. But it's so many friends who are trying to arrive with their spiritual practice or trying to get their attachment wounds just right. You know, they're disorganized, they're avoidant or anxious attachment, trying to figure out their Enneagram number. And it's this like, there are days where I'm like, when do we arrive? Like, when are we healthy enough? And I have so many friends who are doing their outer work and we want to save the world. And it's, like you said, so urgent right now, and it should be. But I say, like, when do we know we've got there? Like, when have we accomplished the great apokatastasis in our lifetime? And for those of us so caught up in the effort to get there in our inner work and our outer work, what pastoral advice would you give us to live what you just said about, that place beyond hope?
For me, I pray Mary's prayer from Luke. And I live into the truth of that prayer, where she prays a future reality as having already happened because she believes the promise. which lets me rest in an equanimity today. I've got work ahead.
Yeah.
We've got work ahead. But ultimately, it's our ability to take up that work with a sense of joy and equanimity that will allow it for the Holy One to take our one loaf and make it 1,000. Not in a logical way. The Holy One is here, is with us, is leading us, and will take our small actions and multiply them 5,000 times. I love that. For me, that's the multiplication of the loaves. That my small crumb of work will become an ocean for the Holy One to use.
I so appreciate that. It's so encouraging. I joke about the difference between feeling like you're throwing water balloons at wildfires or actually finding your spot in the bucket brigade, and your tiny work to do in the world. That's such a good image that it matters. And I appreciate that it's your loaf and your fish that can be multiplied. Oh man, that's good stuff.
Well, and I think of the stories of Desmond Tutu at the height of apartheid in South Africa, of his standing there with that beautiful smile of his, with a soldier in front and a gun. Don't know whether the gun was actually pointed at him, but holding a gun. And Desmond Tutu going, "Join us.
Yeah.
You know we're going to win.
Yeah.
Join us."
Yeah. I don't think I knew how much I needed to hear that today. Thank you. Oh, and thank you for permission to trust the journey and to trust the road. And also maybe stay suspicious of myself when I think I found the answer. Oh my gosh. Alexander, for anyone who wants to dig more deeply into your work and learn more from you, where's the best place for them to start?
Oh, please go to our website, Quadratus, QUAD for 4, RATOS, QUADRATOS.org.
Amazing. This has been so rich. I being a fan of your work, I know you've given us just an appetizer and folks can go so much deeper with it, but wow, an appetizer that's a feast at the same time. Thank you. This has been amazing. I cannot say enough.
We need to sit over a table sooner than 7 years.
Yeah, 100%. I really want to come to Spain. So it's funny. I didn't know you were there. I've been telling Mirabai for the last year or 3, when everyone was like, where's left on your bucket list? Where do you want to go next? And I'm like, I just feel this draw to Spain, probably because of its connection here. So I would love that.
There are many amazing places all over this planet.
Oh,
Spain is amazing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hooked my heart.
You've got a room. Come.
Oh, I will take you up on that.
All right.
I absolutely will. And yes, it's been too long since we sat down and had a good face to face. My gosh,
Please get my ingredients all at the center.
Count on it. Count on it. Count on it. All right. Every blessing. Thank you for being so generous with your time and your wisdom. And I look forward to talking again soon. Oh my gosh, friends, thank you so much for joining us for another conversation on The Healer with 1,000 Faces. I hope that you were as inspired and intrigued by Alexander as I am every single time that he and I talk. If you want to learn more about him, of course, you can Google Alexander Shaia, Shaia, or you can check out Quadratos, Quadratos online. We'll put his website and all the things in the show notes. And as always, if you'd like to help the show, you are welcome to like us. You are welcome to rate us. A 5-star rating really, really helps us. And a positive review helps us get the word out. Subscribe. The number one thing you can do is listen and tell your friends. and have some conversations about these amazing conversations. Thank you especially for being a part of taking your own healing and putting it in the healing of the world. Once again, happy birthday to my buddy Ryan Keller, and big thank you for helping us get these episodes produced. Friends, I've got so many more conversations in the vault, and I cannot wait to share them with you in the coming weeks and months. We'll see you again soon.